Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Glad to see everyone here today. So, we're just waiting for people to hop on in. Tell us where you're from so we can know where all the people are. And also make sure you are sharing with the hashtag starting again in spotlight classes. So, hashtag starting again, hashtag spotlight classes. All right, family, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, welcome to the first spotlight class of 2026. I am host slash one of the panelists, Reverend Daniel Cobbins. I serve as the digital pastor here at the Field Charlotte, and we are going to do introductions, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what spotlight classes are, what they will be, and they give you some insight into the future towards the end of our conversation today. So, Reverend Sims, you can go first, and Ayana, you can go after that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Reverend Patricia Sims, and I am an associate minister at the Mayfield Memorial Missionary Baptist Church, where my pastor is the Reverend Dr. Wary Peter, and it's just good to be on this panel.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ayana Faust. I'm a current um, behavior technician, RBT. Was a special educator. So I'm tapping into a new field. I attend United Nations Church of Charlotte, where my Bishop Antonio Booker and Pastor Marcella Booker. And I'm just happy to be on the panel today.
So, we're excited to have you both here today. Um, so, our these are spotlight classes. We're doing this once a quarter, so we're doing one every 3 months. And the whole goal of the spotlight classes is for us to get a different perspective on things that we as humans deal with. Now, since all three of us are Christians, it will come from a Christian context, but we invite everyone, regardless of their spiritual walk in life, to join us as we have these wonderful conversations, with our first one today being starting again. So we're gonna go and get right into it. So we're gonna have some questions to just facilitate our conversations and then go from there. So uh Reverend Sims, Ayana, when you hear the word starting again, what emotions come up first? Hope, fear, exhaustion, relief, any other emotions you may feel, and why?
Okay, I'll start.
I'll say, let the Reverend go.
So I'm not, when I saw this question, I guess it's according to the facts and circumstances, right? So I thought about when I moved from Virginia to Charlotte, and that was in 2018. And so the emotion I felt was excitement because I knew I was going to be in a city where most of my grandkids was living, so I get to see them all the time. But on the other hand, I wouldn't call it fear, but I would call it concern because I was it was the unknown. I was leaving a place that I had stayed in since 1985 is when I was in Virginia, and then 2018 coming to Charlotte. I'm leaving my friends. I'm leaving my church. I don't know if there's going to be affordable housing. I don't know how long I can stay with my kids. So those were some of my concerns about starting again. Um, and the other thing is on a spiritual level. I think about starting again uh, because sometimes when God gives me a test and I don't pass it, when I fail, when I fail a test and I have to, because sometimes I reason out things and I take things into my own hand instead of me praying about a situation and asking God what to do. Oh no, I'm just going forward. And so when I think about it in that aspect, I need to just wait on the Lord, wait on the Holy Spirit to guide me. And so grace and mercy comes to mind, because it's the Lamentations that says, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassion never fails. So I'm so glad that God gives us chance after chance, to get it right. So yeah, those are the things I kind of think about.
All right. So what comes to my mind is this time around is hopeful, because with me, my story is that I have a 25-year-old son, and also have a daughter that's about to be 5. So when I say hopeful, it's more or less like in my mind, I feel like I'm working in purpose this time. The first time I did it, I had a child, it was out of wedlock. And of course, again, I made a lot of mistakes, but I just feel like this time God is allowing me to walk in purpose, and I can hear his voice clearly. Whereas I heard his voice, but I wasn't trying to hear his voice then. And now it's like I feel like I'm walking in purpose, but also being stretched at the same time, because I feel like God is putting me in so many different places. And I'm like, wait a minute, God, you want me to go to school? You want me to go back to school? I'm 40 years old. You want me to be a mama again? I'm 40 years old. Like, you want me to be, registered, all these different environments, and it's like I'm being stretched. But God is also telling me, like, you got this, you can do it. I want to see you thrive in more than one environment. So I'm also being stretched, but also I feel like, I feel hopeful, like, okay, God, where are you taking me? So I'm just ready for this new journey that he's putting me on. And I'm just allowing God to sort of kind of take my hand, and I'm just walking with God. At some point I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is too much. But at the same time, I'm basically dependent on his mercy. Like you said, his grace and mercy has brought me through everything. So now that I know that it's a purpose, I'm walking in purpose, and I'm praying, I'm fasting for God to help me, and not just making decisions like I did before. When I make a decision, even if I know that, hey, it's something that's going to be difficult, going back to school right now, I thought that was crazy work. I'm like, God, you want me to go back to school? What? So I tried everything I could not to go back. And then it kept coming up like, you need to go back. You need to go back to school and get this. So just hopeful, but at the same time, kind of a little bit of fear, and like being stretched at the same time, if that makes sense. But I'm also like excited for the journey um at the same time. So yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely feel that. As someone who just finished a degree, I understand the fear component of that. Yeah, most definitely. And then thinking about my own next steps, definitely brings up some anxiety as well. So I definitely understand that. I'll be praying for you on that because that stuff's not.
Thank
It's
you.
fun, but it's fun but not fun. Yeah, you see, I'm
Yes.
rubbing my head because I'm having flashbacks of being in school.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand. And being a parent of a small children,
Hmm.
whew, and trying to
Yes.
go to school, yeah, it's not for the weak. I'm gonna tell you that now.
It is not. It is not at all. So the first thing that comes to mind when I think of starting over, it's actually relief. It kind of reminds me of, it made me think of all the times, the things that I've gone through, and when God kind of commanded me to start over, and how it was like, oh, I don't gotta do all this extra stuff no more. Gave me kind of a peace of mind where I could just lay that stuff down and literally start over. It almost made me think about people who file for bankruptcy Granted, nobody wants to file for bankruptcy, but it gives people that opportunity to start over when the burdens of life have become too heavy.
Right.
And obviously, with bankruptcy, there's some damage that is at times irreparable, but it gives you that brief moment of relief for people to get back and get started on that journey to be financially healthy again. And in our case, it could be even physically healthy again, mentally, emotionally,
Mhm.
spiritually healthy again. So starting over for me kind of gives you that break of what was and what could be. Yeah. So um as we're thinking about starting over, how this is a good question. How do we discern whether a new beginning is something we choose versus something God allowed? And I'll go ahead and start this one because I really love this question. And I think this is where, for a lot of us, this is where we get stuck when we're trying to start again because we don't know. We don't know if it's God, if it's the enemy, if it's me, or my new version of the enemy, my inner me. I don't know who it is. And so I think this is where the gift of discernment and having people who are gifted in that area is so critical in life because it's those waters are often murky for many of us and we don't know who to trust at times. We don't know even with ourselves, and we can even trust ourselves with whether or not we ourselves are the ones starting over, or if it's God telling us to start over, if God is allowing this, or if we're rushing the process. But one thing that I have looked at when I am going through these moments of starting again is what is the perceived end goal here? Why am I starting over? And also, what is the end goal of this starting over? What do I want to accomplish after I start over? And once I look at that, it will help me better determine where, who the source is of this starting over, starting again. Um, if God allowed it, then not only am I going to be changed from it, but the overflow of that transformation is going to affect people around me. Whereas if it's just me, 9 times out of 10, it's going to crash and burn. If it's the enemy, the end goal is going to be my demise or me falling further into the despair that I'm trying to start again from. So I think that knowing and I having an idea of where the trajectory of this starting again could go can help better determine if it's you trying to force something or if God is trying to allow you to have a moment, a season of starting again.
That's good. I definitely agree with what you were just saying, and what I was going to say in regards to discernment is that me, I just feel like in my situation, I don't feel like I'm starting over per se, but I feel like God is restoring what I already had. God is expanding what I already had because I'm going from special education to now behavior education, right? So God is not putting me at a place where I don't know anything. I'm already familiar with this place. I already been a mother, right? So each situation he put me in is like he's restoring me and expanding me to be a better person in the situation. So, okay, yes, you were an educator, but now, you know, I'm going to restore you to where now that the situation you're in now, you know me, right? So you're going to be coming from a God place. So I just feel like to me, I'm just grateful that I'm not starting with nothing, right? God is storing everything he's storing everything that I had and giving me more. He's expanding what I already knew. So I just feel like I'm not necessarily starting over, but expanding. So my cup is running over versus it was so empty. Now he's running my cup over with ideas. I mean, somebody told me I'm supposed to have a school, and I'm like, okay, God, I'm supposed to have a school. So he's wanting me to, get educated in all the areas I work with kids with autism. So I've already been in the special education atmosphere. Now he's putting me in the atmosphere where I work in ABA. So I'm learning, different aspects of special education. So maybe, maybe I'm supposed to get a school. I don't know what God is doing, but I'm following his word. And I'm glad that I'm starting from a place where I have a little bit of knowledge and not starting just fresh. So that's a good thing. I have something to carry.
Wonderful, wonderful. So it says, how do we discern whether a new beginning is something we choose or something God allowed? And for me, when I'm trying to discern things, of course, we're going to pray about the decision, right? Um, I have so many questions. So it's like, would it be a wise thing to do? Would this situation be a wise? How would the decision benefit me? Does this decision align with God's word? And
Yeah.
would it benefit the kingdom? Uh,
Mm,
will I have peace about it? About the decision, and according to how heavy that decision is, I may need to fast because the word says some things only come by prayer and fasting, right? So I may decide about a thing or a situation and get it wrong. I might just get it wrong. But God still allowed it, even though He didn't initiate it, right? And I go to Romans 8:28, and it says, and know that in all things God worked for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. So even though we decide a thing and we discern a thing and we get it wrong, God still can get glory out of it. So that's how I see it. I say, as long as I got him and the Holy Spirit living inside me, I'm gonna mess up some stuff, but God is still faithful. He's still faithful. So yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you, Reverend Sims, you talked about that added layer of fasting and praying
Hmm.
in line with your discernment, because, and I love that text because it reminds us that sometimes the things that we are going through or the things we need guidance and discernment from, it requires something outside of our normal measures.
Yeah.
Come
Yeah.
on.
And I just love how Jesus said, with this thing, it requires X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
So it tells us that there will be times where the conventional methods of our faith are not enough to find the answer to a question. And it's not to say those measures aren't good. It's just for this particular thing, this particular situation, it requires a little bit more.
Yeah.
And how, I would even dare to say how often, how much better we would be if we had those moments of discernment when we recognize, like, hey, prayer's not necessarily working. Scripture reading is not necessarily changing the situation. Maybe God is calling me for something to do something a little more specific, a little more fine tuned, a little more intensive to help me navigate what is going on in my life. So yeah, I love that thing because it just tells me sometimes it requires something more. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
I just
So
wanted I just
yeah,
wanted to add to
absolutely.
that. I'm glad you said that. Being like obedient to what God is saying in the area of like when you go and fast and God said, "Hey, I need you to get." God told me to get by myself, right? And that means I wasn't taking no friends. It's sort of like I had to drop off all my friends, and I was like, "Wait a minute, God." He wanted me to get where I could get somewhere where I could hear Him, and I'm thinking I don't have any friends anymore, but it was a sacrifice, right? And it was me
Mhm.
being obedient to God. But if I had certain friends in my ear, I couldn't hear him.
Right.
So, but discernment and fasting and praying told me that I needed to do that.
Yeah.
And when I heard it, I was like, what you mean? I don't. No, I ain't gonna have my friends. So I had to get in a quiet place. And I had a friend that tell me, like, girl, you acting real funny. And like, I don't see you no more. Like, but I literally had to tell her, like, I'm sorry, this is something that it's part of my process, is what I said. So yeah, that being obedient and discernment and fasting and praying is very important on this journey of starting over or renewal and all the things. So yeah, I'm glad you said fasting.
Yeah, and sometimes when people, and I'm not saying your friends are or aren't, But those who are sensitive to the spirit can recognize those things,
Yeah.
especially when you tell them that. And so while in that season, you may not have friends, they're still in the background praying for you and waiting for you to come out so y'all can reestablish that friendship. Because like I said, if we have friends, family members even, who are sensitive with that or at least understanding in those seasons, we're there we're able to better navigate it because we're not feeling bad. Because
Right.
oh, we done cut these people off when not knowing that they're in the background after we've told them this, that they're praying with us and praying for us in whatever it is. So sensitive friends who are spiritually sensitive, family members who are spiritually sensitive, they're able to help recognize those things and they don't take it personal. Not everyone can do that, but prayerfully, we'll hope that there are some folks who will be able to not take it personal and will able to come back to us in the fold if God so chooses.
That's right.
That's the main word. If God chooses, so it'll come back together.
Yep,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Um, So, Ayana, you said something about being restored, which is actually a great segue into our next question. So, what is the difference between starting over and being restored? I'm gonna let you have that one first since you brought that up. So, what is
Okay.
the difference between starting over and being restored?
I think so. I think I kind of went into that a little bit just now, just about um like kind of like I felt like I wasn't necessarily starting over. I just felt like I was being restored. And sort of like so starting over means like you're rebuilding from scratch, right? And then restore just means that God is redeeming what was lost and giving it new life. So that's like if you restore a piece of furniture, right? If you have a piece of furniture and you're restoring the furniture, you're not starting with a new piece, right? You're restoring a new piece that's already made. You're just kind of bringing it back to life. So that's I feel like in my situation, God is restoring me, and He's pressed me so much. Like I've been now having to pray at prayer at my church. And recent, like I was always very shy to pray out loud and everything. So I've been pushed into that's just how I know it's a new season because I've been pushed into assignments I would have never done
Mm,
back then, like the pray over pray over the church in the morning. And when we have prayer at church on once a month, I've been asked to pray doing that. And that's one thing I asked God to make stronger my prayer life. And so I've been actually pushed to do these assignments, which is also making me, read my word more, and making sure that I practice, praying more throughout the day. So when it comes to restoring, I think that he's restoring me and filling me up even more to for his purpose,
yeah.
right? And like in the Bible, Job didn't start over, he was restored.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So like I just feel like, for me, I'm just being restored in
Yeah.
all areas of my life. I guess people could probably look at me and be like, oh, she had the most perfect life, but I lived in a lot of shame over a lot of decisions because I was that person who graduated at the top of my class when I graduated. I had scholarships, so I was, very smart, right? But I made some bad decisions, and it took me a while to come back from those bad decisions. And after a while, I continued to make the same decisions. The
Mm,
same bad decisions I knew were bad
yeah.
decisions. So it took, I dealt with a lot of shame, right? Shame, just, Lord, I know I could have done better. And I grew up in the church with my grandparents, deacons, choir, all the things. So like, and then looking back and be like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be a lot further in life. And, all those things of dealing with shame. And I just feel like, God had to finally bring me to a place where he was like, daughter, I got more for you. You're not just a special education teacher. I want you to do so much more. So I'm just now being able to see that, okay, God, you want me to, explore all these areas. And I just feel like he's just restoring me versus putting me in a start over position. I'm being
Yeah.
restored.
That is so good. That is so good. And for me, starting over, it may mean a new beginning for most people, especially if they had a loss, if there was a loss in their life. But for me, the thing that I think about is because, I did lose my husband in 2022, and I was his caretaker for, a good 10 years before he passed away. And then my sister came along. And so my sister had dementia, and now I am the caretaker for my sister. And so it was like, not knowing how my life would be affected from this. You know, I had in my mind that I was going to travel. I wanted to see some of the United States. I've never been to Niagara Falls and certain places like that. Um, and I wanted to see travel overseas. It's not a good time to do that right now, but
Unfortunately, no.
but I had plans. So instead of being able to travel and do the things that I had planned, it all changed. So starting over often follows external change,
Mm-hmm.
while restoration often follows internal healing.
Mm.
So restoration means what was broken is being made whole again. It is redemptive and often relational, sometimes we can make a bad decision, but God, in His mercy, His compassion, can restore us. And restoration always involves God's. So we see in the Bible, and I use Peter because we see in the Bible how Peter denied God 3 times, right?
Mm-hmm.
But God restored him to his original calling. Uh, and so I just think that, restoration is just being made whole again. And just like God restored Peter, He can restore me. And I may get a chance to travel eventually.
I love that. And I feel like both of you have really said what I had jotted down. But yeah, so starting again, it gives you the opportunity to shed the things of old and to latch on to something different, something new, something refreshing, something that is slightly outside of our comfort zone. Or it may be all the way out of our comfort zone. And being restored, like Ayana said, is something that you've lost and God is giving it back to you, or you were already on the right track and you just kind of took a detour and God is bringing you back in. But in this conversation now, another question has come up. Um, can you be starting over and being restored at the same time? Because I'm thinking all we don't when we start again, it doesn't always mean that we're doing a total starting again. Sometimes I think too that there are elements that we are going through that God is telling us to start again, while there's other elements that God is restoring in us. That's what I'm thinking anyway. Because as Ayana was talking, I was just wondering, what if God allows us to start again while simultaneously restoring us? And what would that even look like if that's a thing? So I want to come back to that because that's a kind of a weighty question. So we're gonna go to the next question, and then if you feel something come up with that um organically, then yes, please let's bring it in. But that was just something that came up. Like, I mean, I'm certainly God can, but have there ever been seasons in people's life where God is allowing us to start again while simultaneously restoring us?
I definitely think it is, but yeah, we'll come back to that.
Yeah. And I actually just thought of an idea, because you kind of touched on it too, Reverend Sims, when you have a loss of a family member.
Yeah, yeah,
So I'm thinking like when my dad died, I had to start again into this new life without him while at the same time being restored um while going through the grief,
that's right.
losing him, and how now every single day since July 18th, 2022 at 3:29 a.m. has been a brand new day,
Yeah.
of a day where I no longer can call him up at 6:30 in the morning while I'm driving to Southwest Middle School at the time to tell him about my day or the day before that I was a 40-minute drive from where I live. So, or even now writing sermons, wanted to call him and say, "What do you think about this?" Knowing that I can't do that anymore. But to have God restore me in such a way where those conversations can still be had, but not in the same light in which they were had before July 18th, 2022 at 3:29 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah. And it kind of reminds me of, it's the thing that the Lord told me is that, my husband is not lost because I know where he's at.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I have to go through this grief period, but knowing where he's at, he's not lost. So it's just a matter of tuning into the Christian life and to being a disciple and following Christ and being in the Word, and because we have to keep ourselves in the Word in order to live this Christian life.
Yeah.
And so it's just it's a long road sometimes, but we have to walk it out.
Mm-hmm.
We can't hide and isolate ourselves. We have to, however you can get it out, get it out.
Yeah.
Talk about it, vent about it, cry about it, whatever, to just be able to take it to the Lord, and He'll talk to you about it. He'll tell you what's what. But we have to go through it. It's a
Yeah.
walk that you have to walk. Yeah.
And I think we need to have a stop where, as Pastor would say, I think location identification,
Yeah.
that I don't want those who are watching, those who watch the replay, to think that starting again is easy.
Right.
Starting again is hard. Starting again can at times be more traumatic than what it was before you got to the place of starting again.
That's
But
right.
what comes after that season is what's going to blow your mind, because the person you are after starting again, as the song says, when you look back over your life and think things over, that person prior to the starting again almost looks like an alien to who
Mm-hmm.
the person you are now.
That's right.
Sometimes it's physical change, but it's also emotional, maturity, spiritual. That person who you are now prior to is not the same person. So much so that you look at old pictures of yourself and not just seeing how you physically look, but where you were mentally in that season. And you're like, I don't even know who this person is. The person don't even look like the same person. Like that Daniel in 2022 is the same Daniel that's in front of you all right now. To the point where I look at that Daniel and I'm like, who is that guy? Because so much has happened since I've had to start again.
Mm-hmm.
And so much growth has happened since I've had to start again that I don't even recognize that person anymore. So while yes, it's not easy, it's not fun, and oftentimes we we start again and come out of starting again with scars, those scars still heal. And we see that, wow, even though I started again, God was still with me while I started again.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I just wanted to add, you said how the it's not an easy process, and yeah, it's definitely not easy. And one of the things that I have experienced is even with my family looking at me like, why would you do that? Or like, why would you go back to school? Or, why would you stop, why would you stop your teaching position? And it was just a lot of questions that were there that I had in regard to the word that God had gave me, but also too me kind of running from the word. But in the process of me running from the word he gave me, things happened to where I couldn't, like I was at a private school just like in December, And a situation happened where the lady couldn't afford to pay me no more as a special education teacher. Well, that was just like weird warfare because it was like I was signed on for the whole year, and here it is now you can't pay me anymore to be, your teacher. So that, but God had already told me that's not what I want you doing right now. But again, that's me trying to still push on, like, no, I'm gonna do this. So God pulled me out of that situation, and I was so mad about it. But because it's December. I have to start over. I don't have any pay. I got to be without pay for a whole month. What am I going to do? It was Christmas time. It was all the things. So it was like a lot of warfare that kept coming up in between the process of God had already told me he was changing things. I was doing something different. But it was just hard for me to accept it. And family, it was hard for them to accept it because they felt like I was putting myself in a bind. Which at some point I was in a bind at some point, trying to switch over careers and figure out what I was going to do, and me thinking, okay, I thought I was going to be a special education teacher all my life, for the rest of my life, retire, and all of a sudden now it changes. And so like it was a lot of like also embarrassment because I'm like, dang, I did this, but it's like, was this the right decision? Even
Yeah.
after I made it, even after I prayed, even after I fasted, even after everything I tried to do not to make the decision, went against it, it was still, a point where I felt like, hey, dang, did I make the right decision? So yeah, it's a very hard process, starting over and getting comfortable with your start over, getting comfortable with what God told you. And when people do ask, you're like, you know what, I'm doing what God has told me to do. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But you have to get comfortable with it as well.
That's
Not just making like you're comfortable. You gotta play, because it comes a time where you're just like, I think I'm comfortable. I think I'm happy with this decision, but you got to come to a point where you're solely comfortable. And I mean, it took me a while to get there, but God kept saying, "Daughter, I got you. I haven't failed you yet. I haven't failed you yet." And so, but also like a lot of embarrassment, being almost, being 40 years old and starting, from fresh on a lot of little things. It was just like hard. It's not an easy, it wasn't easy, but by faith of God, my bills, I never lacked. My bills got paid. I was able to still, do what I did with my children. Nothing stopped. My job stopped in the middle of the nowhere, but everything got paid. God still provided.
yeah,
And that's what let me know I was making a God decision because everything, nothing stopped
Mm-hmm.
in regards to my bills or anything. They continue to get paid. Everything continued to go on as normal, but it wasn't normal because I didn't even have a job for almost 2 months.
Hmm.
So, like you said, it was warfare, warfare, warfare. But at the end of the day, God kept telling me, daughter, I got you, daughter, I got you. And he had me. And I had faith in him. I had a word. That's what I had. If I didn't have nothing else, I had a word. I had great leaders that, continued to pour into me, great people around me that prayed for me, that continued to pray when I didn't even want to be prayed for. I felt like, I didn't want to be, in this process anymore. So, and like you said, it's hard. So I just, like you said, I don't want nobody to think this is an easy process, but you must be disciplined. You must have faith in God. You must pray. You must read your word. You must have, leaders covering you to get through a process of starting over because it is very hard. You must have God and put him first.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think about the time when I went to uh, get my master's. God told me to go to seminary and get my master's, and I was like, Lord, I'm almost 60. You mean you want me to go back to school? I'm too old. Plus, I can't do this. I just got too much going on. How am I gonna? I can't remember things like I used to remember. And how am I gonna do this? And so I just had to gird up and go and do it. And we sometimes as elderly people, and I'm not saying I'm elderly, okay, but
You're not.
You're not, you're seasoned.
thank
You're
you.
seasoned. You're not elderly. You're seasoned. That's all.
But sometimes we sit back and think, okay, I'm gonna let the young kids do it. I'm gonna let the young folks go for it, but that's not how it's supposed to be. We're never supposed to stop working. We're never supposed to start learning. We're never supposed to stop. God always has something for all of us to do. and we need to figure that out and find out what it is, because it's never too late to work in the kingdom, because what they say, the harvest is plentiful, right? The labors are
Come on
few.
here.
Mhm.
So
Come
yeah,
on here.
absolutely.
Two things. Reverend Sims, you just reminded me. Oh, I don't remember. I want to say it's in either Exodus, Numbers, or Deuteronomy. But there's a story in the wilderness about I want to say it's almost Caleb. And he's old now. And God tells Caleb to get himself ready to take over the land that he had told him to take. It was a mountain he was supposed to take.
Uh-huh.
And he's old now. And I believe it ended where there was still work to be done. And so it just what you said was just a great reminder of that regardless of where we are in our walk of life, that God still tells us there's still work to be done.
That's right.
There's
That's
still kingdom work to be done. There's still people who need to be transformed. Second thing was talking about starting again. I'm reminded of the first sermon I preached after my father died. It was like 2 months afterwards. We were still in COVID times. Our church was still um virtual. And I remember it was in Judges. I think it
mm,
was Judges 4. And it was the story of Gideon. And it was called Afraid to Trust God. Because that's where I was in life. I was like, God, I'm afraid to trust you right now because if I'm being frank, the kind of healing that I asked for my father is not the healing that he received. I still wanted him here. That's not the kind of healing I was asking for, God. So I'm a little afraid to trust you because I don't know if you have, in my mind, the best intentions for me. Because this is what I asked for, and you gave me something else. But when I tell you, and that season was probably one of my most powerful sermons because not only did it come from the depths of all the feelings I was feeling, it was also the genesis of my starting again. Because for me, and Reverend Sims, this may be the same for you. For preachers at times, preaching is therapy. Preaching gives us a catharsis when we are in our moment because it allows us to kind of say things that we are at times ashamed or scared to say out loud.
Mhm.
we're
Because
preaching to ourselves.
yeah, we're preaching to ourselves and it allows us, I'm going into my preaching theology. It allows us and allows a spirit because preaching for me, as Pastor would say, it is an incarnational action between us and God.
Mm,
So preaching allows the spirit to step into me. The spirit and I have a conversation with the congregation. But those moments that are hard for me to talk about is where the spirit takes over and speaks on my behalf.
Come on.
So
That's
amen.
that
it.
way, in that moment, the spirit is offering therapy to the church while simultaneously giving me the therapy that I need.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So that was the genesis of my starting again because it said, while I'm afraid to trust God in this season, I can still walk into the enemy's camp and
Mm.
hear the gospel that the enemy already has before I'm before I am able to realize that I can trust God and B that I can be able to have the courage to go back and tell my family that hey, we gonna be all right.
That's
Not
right.
because I said it, but the people who wish for our destruction are saying that we gonna be all right.
All right.
Because God, in that preaching moment, has given me therapy through the Spirit while simultaneously giving life to God's people. So that's something that was coming up as I was hearing about y'all's starting over journeys. And I would also say that that's how God simultaneously restored me while also starting again in that
That's good. That's
moment.
good.
is when God said, I'm not just going to preach to these people, but I'm going to give you what you've been asking for since July 18th, 2022, 3:30 a.m. This is what you've been praying about. This is what you've been asking about. These are the questions that you have brought to me. This is where I start answering it for you in
Mm.
August of 2022 with that sermon. So this brings up now to this is a great segue to our next question. Um, because we often know we see this in the Bible. God creates new seasons after disruption. So which biblical story most speaks to you about renewal?
I'll go because I want to continue with Peter.
Go on.
So for me, uh, it's Peter, the renewal of Peter. You know, after Peter denied Jesus 3 times, he regresses and he goes back to fishing. But in John 21, Jesus does not discard him. You know, Peter denied Jesus around a charcoal fire. Jesus restores him around another charcoal fire. When they
Mm,
went fishing,
wow.
Jesus was on the bank uh, with fish. It said to come and feed them. You know what I'm saying? And so God revisits the place Peter had shame, not to condemn him, but to heal him. You know. So Peter was restored to his calling, and then he preached at Pentecost in Acts 2. So you know, I just love how I do believe that God knew Peter's heart. Because if we keep thinking about that, you know, God came back and said, Peter, do you love me? And Peter said, yes. Feed my sheep, feed my lamb, you know, feed my people, whatever. I can't remember all of it, but, you know, he restored Peter. He did not condemn him, he healed him. So that restoration, you know, that speaks to renewal. And,
Yeah.
and just like I always say, if he can do it for the people in the Bible, he can do it for me.
Yes.
You know what I'm
And
saying?
you just added another layer to that. Um with Peter denying Jesus by a fire and being restored by a fire.
Yeah.
And then this just came up. And then not only that, but then being baptized by a whole nother fire.
Yes. Yes.
What I was going to initially say though was how Jesus in that moment not only restored Peter, but started over because while he denied Jesus by a fire, not only did Jesus meet him at a fire to restore him, he restored him with community because
That's right.
Jesus had food,
Yes.
brought food. And at that, I mean, it's still now food and having a communal meal is one of the most intimate things that we can do with people platonically
That's
and
right.
with our family,
That's right.
having a meal. And so Jesus is saying, not only, Peter, am I giving you this opportunity to start again and to restore you, but I'm doing it in such an intimate and powerful way.
That's right.
And also,
Publicly, because all the other
yes, and
disciples.
publicly, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
in front of all the other disciples who
Yes.
also,
Mhm.
while not verbally denying him like Peter, they
Mhm.
also left other than John.
That's right. That's
So while Peter was the one who got the verbal feed my sheep because he was the one that verbally denied Jesus, you could also you could almost make the argument that he was telling all of them, if you love me, feed my sheep.
yeah, well, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he specifically spoke with Peter because
Uh-huh.
Peter was the one who denied him verbally 3 times.
And then too, and I, you know, like I said, I'm getting old, so I can't remember everything. But what didn't the women at the grave site when they came out, Jesus said, "And go tell Peter."
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Mhm.
And go tell Peter.
Mhm.
So Jesus loved Peter, and Peter, I believe his heart posture was right, and that's why, you know, unlike uh, what's the guy who denied him, Judas,
Yeah,
unlike Judas, you
for
know
sure.
what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Yeah. So yeah.
So I would say the the story of the prodigal son and him wanting his inheritance early and thinking that he could go out and just do things his way and, not want the money but didn't want the relationship. He just wanted to
Hmm.
take his inheritance and go about his business and do his own thing, not listen to God, not have a covering, just do what you want to do. And so I just kind of felt like that just kind of in my mind, kind of like my story a little bit, like, I just was out there doing what I wanted to do. Knowing, how to follow God, just didn't want to, just doing what I wanted to do. And, and at the same time, he still was able to come back. Like we still able to come back to God, even through our trials and not doing what's supposed to do, not being obedient. God will still, take us back. And, in this moment, like he hit rock bottom, before he came back. And again, I feel like, again, that was like my situation. I just felt like I came to a point where it was like, you know what? I need to do something. This isn't it. I got to get back in God. So the prodigal son for me was, pretty much, I feel like we step into seasons sometimes, and then we find ourselves, looking crazy. So,
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I love the prodigal son story
yeah,
because oftentimes I always, and we probably have heard it now, that it's really the prodigal sons because they both lost in their own respective way.
That's right.
One
right,
left,
right,
one left the house and was lost. One was in the house and still lost.
right. Come on, tell the truth about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to the Old Testament for mine. The story that brings up ideas of starting again after disruption was the second exile when Israel returns back to Jerusalem after being exiled in Babylon. And I thought this one was interesting to me because there's two layers of starting over. There's the first layer of those who were in Jerusalem, came into exile, came back to Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
So they know the former glory live.
Mm-hmm.
They were in real time. They know what it was like. They were there. They saw the temple. They saw all the stuff. Then you have that generation who was born in exile
That's right.
and only knew about this glory from the stories that they've heard. So now they are starting again in the sense of they are trying to capture that flicker of what used to be based on the stories that they have heard. They've only lived on the stories, whereas the older generation experienced it live. And so you have these two groups, these two generations of people starting again, but from two different perspectives. And it is interesting because how, in one sense, the older generation is struggling to fully start over
Yeah,
because they are still fixated on what was before. Whereas the newer generation is trying to wrestle with the excitement of what God is doing now while still honoring the stories of what they've heard in the past. The only difference is that because they're only stories to them, important stories about their history, but stories nonetheless, now it is their time to lay that foundation that brought life to stories that they've heard as children, whereas the older generation is struggling because those stories was their life.
hmm,
So everybody's starting over in a different way. And so it's just a good reminder for us that God is not just working on the stuff starting over. God's not just working on that stuff in the past to help us get to the present, but God is also telling us that sometimes the starting over is blocking us because we can't see the new thing that God is working on, the new thing God is about to do, because we're fixated on the stuff that got us to the place to start over in the first place.
right.
And I
So
was
go ahead, Reverend.
I was thinking, and I'm not sure because they started over so many times.
Mm-hmm.
If you were on this one or not, but one of the thing about the generation that the new generation that was not born in Babylon. They were in exile. They went back to Jerusalem, and it took them a while, because they started thinking about themselves again.
Hmm.
They
Mhm.
started, building houses and doing all the things that they needed to do for themselves instead of trying to build the temple.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes it takes us a while to get
Hmm.
back to normal, even though they've told us these stories, but sometimes it takes us a little while to get our footing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the beautiful thing about starting again, there's no timeline for what
Right.
that looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when the time was right, the time was right. That's really that. So, y'all, we only got about 3 minutes left.
Wow.
So, yeah, I know the
It
conversation
went fast.
is
It went
great.
fast.
Yes, the conversation has been great. So, we're going to go ahead and go to our final question, and it's talking about intention. So, and out for those who are watching, for those who watch the replay, I want you all to reflect on this as well. What would it look like for you to start again this year with intention? And the good thing about it is tomorrow will mark 3 months into 2026. So you still got time to think about this. What would it look like for you to start again this year with intention? Reverend Sims, I'm gonna let you go first because you were excited about this one.
For me, and I tell you what, we had that session at our church today with the couple, and it was so, so good. And
Yeah.
for me, it's a line in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be intentional about aligning my heart, my habits, and my direction with what God is saying to me now. What I'm saying? Not what He said to me last year, but what He's saying to me now.
Yeah.
And to move forward with that alignment. And so I have to be intentional. I really do. And so that's just, I mean, I have to be obedient. I have to be disciplined, and I have to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
That consistency gets me because I'll start a thing and stop, but I have to be intentional to keep it moving, keep it going.
Yeah.
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 I was gonna say for me, what that looks like is looking at myself in the mirror, keeping, and being, having realistic expectations,
Mm,
trusting in God, and pretty much just leaving self doubt behind, stop doubting myself. And when I say realistic expectations, just being consistent with, okay, if this, whatever my goal is, just setting steps to get to that goal, right? Not expecting that I'm gonna get right to that goal immediately, because I had a thing with that, like this will be my goal and I'm expecting to get there, versus like Cobbins can agree, objectives
Yep.
to the goal.
That's what
I'm
I was
just like, I
thinking
want to
about.
get, yeah, if I didn't want to get to the goal, I didn't make that goal, so you know what, now I'm mad at myself. No, I have to have steps to get to that goal, so setting those just realistic expectations versus unrealistic, I think that's a big part. And then just looking at myself and evaluating, you know when I do make mistakes, just trying to evaluate how can I do that better.
right.
What could I have did to make that better. And and I want to be in the image of God, right? So just evaluating myself, not always thinking that you might offend somebody, right? But that's how they feel, right? But also evaluating, like, how could I have done that better where they wouldn't have got offended? What did I do wrong? Looking at me, doing a lot of looking at me,
Yeah.
self-evaluating, and being disciplined, and that's in all areas. One of my things I struggle with is being on time. So I'm trying to get disciplined and being on time. I have to be honest on here, okay? So I struggle with being on time and doing things at the last minute, and God is working on me with that. So that's one of the things that one of those realistic things um, I'm trying to do. That's why I got on here early, because that's something I struggle with, being on time and doing things at the last minute. So that's another thing. And I feel like, um, if I can be on time for work, I can be on time for everything else, and everything gonna fall in place, right? And just being consistent with being on time for all the things. And also just being a better mother than I was before, being more patient and yeah, just trying to be a better mother, a daughter, and all the things I am. I just want to be better with it this year, and being intentional about reading my word, being intentional about hearing from God, and yeah, so that's where I'm at for this year.
Yeah, and I want to encourage you with another special education term, and I'll explain it to everyone else after that. Grace is an accommodation.
Hmm.
So, accommodation, for those of you who are not familiar with that terminology, us in special education for our students, our goal is to help them get as close to grade level as possible. And what we may use is an accommodation to help them get there. And the goal for the accommodation is to help them with testing, but also help them with accommodations in the classroom. So think of it like this: this is the goal, grade level instruction. Here's where they are. The space between the two is the accommodation to help them get as close to this as possible. Grace is an accommodation for us because when we give ourselves grace, here's the goal that we want to be at. Here's where we are. The space between the two, as close as we are, for me is grace. That
Wonderful.
is what we have to do to help us get there. Give ourselves that grace. Give ourselves the awareness that while I may not be perfect in where I want to be, I'm not where I used to be, and I'm still progressing towards where God is calling me to be. So
Amen.
that was a quick summary for that.
Amen.
Um,
Amen.
if I were to start this year over again, I think I would do the same thing that I've been currently doing. So last year, the last few years for me, my theme for the year has been is turning around for me. And
All right.
so I
That's
would
good.
I told my wife last year that God is pushing me out of that part of my that season of my life. It has turned around for me. And so this
It has turned around for me. Come
year,
on.
and so this year is now the theme is going up for me. It's taking off for me. That's what I said. It's taking off for me. And so my intentionality for this year is like everyone else, consistency, making sure that I have feet wet faith as our theme for this year
I
is.
was just about to
It
say
turns
that.
yes. And so feet
Okay.
wet faith is you're stepping into the water before realizing the water is going to divide and clear the pathway for you.
Wow.
So you're
Okay.
stepping into the water, knowing that your feet will get wet, not knowing that God is already in the water about to separate it, to make
Okay.
the path for you. And this is all in Joshua 3 for those who are not familiar with the field and want to know about what we're doing this year. So it is me operating in that mindset that I am walking with the faith that God is going to not direct my path, but create the path and
All
then
right.
direct it for me.
Come on.
So
Yeah.
that's where I am at right now. That is my intention, making sure that wherever I do, wherever my feet land, that I am walking in the assumption that God is going to make the path. So
Wow.
regardless of where I go, regardless of where I move, the path's going to be prepared for me. I may not see it at first, but as soon as my feet land, that's when the path's going to become clear. So that's where I'm at. I'm just being intentional about how I move, why I move, and when I move. Uh,
Mm.
so
Five
yeah,
W's and one H.
yep, that's it. One big G to take care of it all.
Come on.
Yeah.
Right.
Five
So
W's and one H with the G. Yes,
that's
the
it.
big G.
That's it. So yeah, I want to thank everyone who was able to join us, and thank you for those who do
Thank
watch
you.
it back. We hope this is a good conversation for you that you can have and send to your friends and family. And we're looking forward to our next conversation. I believe the next one is healing trauma in May. So we'll be talking about that or one of the other ones we got because we're again having 4 conversations throughout this year. Um, we're looking forward to having everyone just continue with us, and we'll have more information on that next spotlight class soon. So God bless you, God keep you. May
Thank you for having us.
and yes, absolutely,
Reverend Sims, it
absolutely.
was so nice to meet you.
You too. You
I
too.
know I'll see you soon.
It's a, it will be a pleasure.
All
All right,
right. You guys have a
everyone.
good evening.
Be well. Be blessed, y'all.
All
Okay.
right. You too.